Welcome to the Monday Club from the Irish News. In this week's show, we'll take an in-depth look at Tyrone and Derry, and we're also going to discuss the ongoing situation surrounding Allianz's sponsorship of the National Leagues. Okay, so I'm joined by Cahair and Kenny Archer. Cahair, you've stuck with a shirt again this week, fair play.
Good of you to dress up for
once.
once.
I know, got a bit of bad manners last week after the jumper.
You talk about getting the laughs out of the way there. I remember the time me and you on Facebook Live that went badly wrong. This is much more upmarket
production
a bit more
these professional
days.
Now, doesn't
Absolutely.
It? Yeah. So we're gonna have a wee discussion about Tyrone and Derry. I suppose the premise is who is closer to an All Ireland, which there's a lot of layers to that conversation, obviously. But when we look at it, Tyrone obviously reached an All Ireland semi-final last year. Derry have had a couple of nightmare years, but there is a renewed optimism now with Kieran back. Early days so far, but Tyrone haven't had an ideal start to the National League. Derry got their first win in 19 months against Tyrone on Saturday night. What's the feeling? We'll start with Derry first of all, Cahair. What's the feeling about where Derry are, and in terms of the time that has maybe been lost?
The feeling generally is probably a wee bit behind where I think they are. I think they're closer to it than probably most people do, in the sense of, for me, there's 8-9 teams in a pack behind Kerry, and there's very little that separates those 8 or 9 teams. You know, if Derry were playing Tyrone in the championship game tomorrow, there could be a kick of a ball. If Derry were playing Donegal in the championship game tomorrow, I believe there'd be a kick of a ball. Tyrone, Armagh last year was a last minute winner. You know, there is so little to separate.
Never free.
You've seen what Mayo have done the first 2 rounds of the league. You've seen, you know, Dublin are dropping off, but they're still very much in the pack and stuff. So, like, who are the team most likely? And everybody looks and still probably thinks it's Donegal, and probably is Donegal at the minute. But the pack is pretty tight, and I just feel like, you know, people forget that Derry team won back-to-back Ulster Championships. That whole Derry team, and then they just fell into a cave where things just went so badly wrong for those 2 years, and they just couldn't pull themselves out of it. And you're right, like, it was 582 days without a win. You will take any sort of win you get, and they just need to win a few games and refine their confidence, and then I believe that's where you'll see where they're actually at in terms of the ability that they have. Because at the minute, I go back to last year's group stage, drawn into the grip of death, and the last 25 minutes against Armagh, the whole 70 against Galway, and the whole 70 against Dublin, at probably their lowest point, Derry were not far away. So that tells you that they're in the conversation. And I remember Jim McGuinness saying, I met him last November previous, about 14, 15 months ago, and he said, like, all we talk about is getting ourselves into the conversation, getting ourselves in the mix of teams, and once you're in the mix, then it sort of depends what happens every Sunday, but get yourself in the mix first. And for me, as much as Tyrone are in that mix, Derry are definitely in that mix.
You could see that lack of confidence though on Saturday night. I think you could see the way that they were rushing some of the, you know, they created 3 or 4 goal chances and that kind of thing. And maybe that is a confidence that you expect will come along. Kenny, whenever you look at Tyrone, then there are question marks, I would say now. You know, we're in the second year with Malachy O'Rourke. Everywhere he's gone before, everything has turned to gold really, but this has taken a bit longer. And I was talking to Peter Canavan last week, and he was saying basically, I don't think he was being cute, you know, talking Derry up, but he was saying, you know, if you look at Derry or you look at Donegal or Armagh, you could pretty much name 10 or 11 first choice starters every week. He said that's just not the case with Tyrone. I know, like, the mitigating factors are the guys that they're missing, you know, Paddy Hampsey, McGeary, Darren McCurry, Derek Canavan's only just come back in, Rory Canavan's still not there. But when you look at them, I think you do wonder exactly what it is that the plan is.
Well, can I just pull you back first of all and have to, like our old colleague Paddy Heaney used to write at least one column every spring talking Tyrone up as All-Ireland champions, and
That's
have
why
to
I'm
say,
wary. Whenever Peter was talking about that last week, I was going,
But genuinely, all joking aside, Derry are in that mix, as Cahair says, a bit behind Kerry. But like that was what 2022, they pushed Kerry really close in that All-Ireland semi-final. They've got a lot of those players there already. So just on Derry, they're definitely in the conversation. Confidence was low, but they have such a bunch of quality players, particularly in defence and midfield. There are maybe some question marks over them in attack, but they've got Shane McGuigan, Paul Cassidy, who I really like, Ethan Docherty, Lachlan Murray. There's really good forwards for Derry there as well. Tyrone are that bit further back. I mean, last year Tyrone overachieved by getting to the All-Ireland semi-final.
but they still beat Donegal. They still beat Dublin side, albeit like a Dublin side in transition. I know that's on overachievement, but it's like, how do you quantify that? There, how do we kind of look at that? How the fact that they did pull off those wins.
Well, the Donegal one was a group game. That's a different scenario from a knockout
First one
match.
after Ulster as well, was it?
Yeah.
I think as well.
And the Armagh match, Tyrone did better in that genuinely than I thought. I was going into that game as a Tyrone supporter with hope, not expectation. And Tyrone played pretty well that day. Didn't actually, could have been a lot more from them, but obviously a really close game. And Donegal and Armagh, there's a, old days reference here, but there's a cigarette paper between them. They're up there at that level. So Tyrone, this has not been a good start to the league. Against a 14-man experimental Kildare team with the wind for most of the second half, they should have closed that out. But there was a lot of experience still to come back into that Tyrone team, and Malachy O'Rourke is trying young players out. That was a great thing that Fergal Logan and Brian Dewar did after the probably surprise All-Ireland of 2021 in their first season. They brought a lot of young fellas in, gave them experience, and that maybe made it difficult at times in the league and even in championship. But then those lads have got a lot of appearances under their belt, and Tyrone have maybe the one advantage Tyrone might have over Derry, and Cahair will talk about this as well, is depth. Tyrone, if they get everybody back, might have a bit more depth than Derry. But realistically, Tyrone are going to struggle to get to an Ulster final. That's not the be-all and end-all anymore, but that is a tough side of the draw. And from then on in, it's almost a luck of the draw of where you get in the group stages and so on. But if you had to give me a choice between Derry or Tyrone to get to All-Ireland semi-finals or final this year, I would definitely pick Derry.
Cahair, I was at Celtic Park on Saturday night and talking to Tyrone people, and there is a, don't know if concern is the right word, but just there's nearly not a huge expectation at the minute, which is unusual for Tyrone. And again, I go back to name dropping Peter, something shocking here, but
my mate Peter,
yeah.
I've got his phone number too,
But what he was saying, I didn't just bump into him on the street, by the way, but
you were hanging around, stalking him.
hanging around waiting for him. But
I was talking to Peter Canavan in Ballyshannon yesterday.
Okay, here we go.
Peter phoned me there a month ago,
But the main area of concern that he raised about Tyrone was around the middle, and maybe a lack of athleticism relative to the main kind of the big players in Gaelic football at the minute. And even watching on Saturday night, Derry were pretty dominant around the middle of the time. Obviously Conor Glass ran unopposed to score a goal, but Conor Doherty was just pulling to the wings and winning. He must have won 3 or 4 balls in the first half. Like, what do you see when you look at Tyrone and what the issues are?
You mentioned that middle area. You think of Tyrone at the minute, and outside of Kieran Daly has probably put a fair stake on a claim for a number 12 jersey over the last wee while. But if you look at their 5, 7, 10, 12 jerseys, you can't be sure in any given week with Kieran McGeary missing who's going to fill those jerseys, and that that kind of lack of consistency in that middle 8 area is probably not helping them in terms of the kick out battle and trying to sort of get their hands on enough ball, because ultimately that's massive now in the game. We talked about them overachieving last year, and it was funny because the first team, I think first team ever to go down on 7 points out of Division 1. So that's fierce unlucky.
But then if you just to look at that, like if you look at the games that they did win there, you know, obviously like Dublin turned up on the last day with nothing to play for. I think it was maybe Donegal, similar, were doing their very best not to get to a league final. You know, so that 7 points thing is thrown about Tyrone. Like, but if you strip it back a wee bit, there's maybe slightly. You can slightly flatter them with that narrative.
No, you're absolutely right. But at the same time, they're not the first team in the history of the league to get a wee bit of a break of that too. So that has happened loads of times. And their championship performances, they could have beat Armagh. They did beat Donegal. They did beat Dublin. I wouldn't say they could have beat Kerry because they couldn't have. You know, the way the game went, you know, Kerry deserved to win that game probably a bit more than they did. So, but and I felt they never really clicked at any point, and yet they did all that. If you know, so I looked at a team and I thought, well, their ceiling is so much higher than what they're currently producing, and I thought, right, coming into year 2, you know, they shouldn't be that far away, and it hasn't started well at all. Their attacking game has just not functioned over several years.
When I watch them now, I feel like they're so reliant on Dara Canavan doing something out of the ordinary. You know what I mean? Like it just, and obviously he's just back. I get that match you're talking about, the semi-final last year against Kerry. Like, you know, that was literally it. You know, that was it. You know, get it to Dara, and if he can, and he was majestic that day. Yeah,
and that's been the way for about 3 or 4 years. When Darren McCurry's in form, get it to Darren and get it to Dara, and see what they can pull out of the hat, and everything else is just a bit round it. You know, see what we can gather up, and that's, you're looking at them and you see other teams and they have patterns of play and they have certain structures within, and you don't look at Tyrone and see that. No. And you haven't seen that for quite a wee while, and that's probably the biggest area of concern for them because of the potential that they have. You know, we've seen that they're looking towards, and they need to look towards, trying to find a different type of a forward, just somewhere in the forward line who's a wee bit of physical presence to give them the option of a kicking game. I mean, Kerry held them at arm's length last year, pushed them out, and Tyrone didn't have the physical because their forwards were smaller and their physical makeup was different, and they kind of need to change that up a wee bit. They need something else, but at the same time, no matter who's filling the jerseys, they still need a bit of structure put to their attack without any question. They've been down a few players. Everybody's down a few players at the minute. You saw Kerry give Donegal a right fill with 5 of their starting All-Ireland final teams, so there's depth, and Tyrone are a county that always has depth because of the nature of their club game and because of their minors and their under-20s doing so well and their schools doing so well. So it means that Tyrone will always have footballers that will keep them at a certain standard. But for them, the challenge is for Tyrone now in the last 25 years has not been staying in the top 8. It's trying to get into the top 2 or 3, and that's where they're probably falling a wee bit short of at the minute.
I just say about the attack, I mean, obviously in 2021, 2 of the big factors in winning that All-Ireland were Conor McKenna and Cahill McShane, you know, neither of whom are there for
Conor
Tyrone
Myler as well.
anymore.
He's also not there.
Yeah, but the physicality and the pace and the power of those 2 guys up front obviously got goals, which were crucial. I think Ethan Jordan has shown up really well for Tyrone. I'm not sure that he's a number 14, but he can add that bit of physical presence in the attack. Matty Donnelly is still there with all that experience. It was interesting what Malachy O'Rourke was trying there against Derry. He pushed Brian Kennedy up from midfield at times as almost a target man.
But he only put 1 ball in on him.
And they've done that repeatedly.
They do it with Con
Kilpatrick
well,
this 4 or 5 years.
They tried Con there at centre half forward as well a bit, and that he got a bit more because Con is great.
I thought he was good on Saturday.
Running with the ball. Yeah. Con, as he would acknowledge himself, has not been at the levels he showed in 2021. You can say that about a lot of the Tyrone players. But there are options there for Tyrone to have good players with physicality in the front 6. And what I like as well, I know you need patterns of play and structure and so on, but it's good as well to have off-the-cuff movement and give a bit of freedom. I mean, some of the kick passing that the Canavans can produce, what Ethan Jordan, that bit of clever thinking to kick that free in to Kieran Daly for the goal. You need that as well. I don't want to see attackers being overcoached and rigid and so on, which you can see with certain teams. But there is, as Cahair says, room for improvement with Tyrone, and I'm not a natural optimist, but there is a lot of ability within Tyrone. It's not necessarily going to be at the top level this year, but Tyrone won't be far away in the second half of this decade.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you do see Canavan and McCurry click, or the Canavan boys, it elevates what Tyrone are doing. And on the same theme, Cahair, with Derry, like obviously we know a lot of the strengths that Derry have, the power that they have from deep. And we're talking about Tyrone's forwards here, but from a Derry perspective, there's an issue there potentially. Shane McGuigan hasn't been maybe at the same height. He definitely hasn't been at the same heights that he had been in the past. Lachlan Murray came on and started on Saturday night, and you could see in the first 10 minutes now, albeit like it went off the rails slightly as the game wore on, but you could see the aggression, the physicality that he brings, the power, and that's something that Derry have lacked. But is there much beneath this? Do you know what I mean? And is that a potential Achilles heel when you look at where Derry can go this year?
It is. Keeping Lachlan Murray fit is the key for Derry right now. Like, keeping Lachlan Murray on the field fit, because he just brings that extra wee bit. Like, he's so direct, and like oftentimes players who are really direct like that will run themselves into blind alleys and get turned over. But Murray's really, really good at finding the right space to take on. And he'll, oftentimes when he takes on a man, he will create a score or score himself, as opposed to going into traffic.
Very hard to stop.
Very good, very, very good at knowing which space to attack. And he just gives you an option. We're talking about kicking, like, it gives Derry an option to kick the ball to him, because they don't really have that outside of that. They don't have natural probably ball winning forwards inside. They're not a team that naturally likes to pull the trigger on 2-point efforts. There's probably a wee bit of work needed on that front, and you could see, it's funny, probably the biggest flaw in their performance on Saturday evening was leaving behind goals. And you could say leaving them behind or trying to force them, whichever way you look at it. And that was a real hallmark of the team that won the back-to-back Ulsters, how good they were at knitting those goals together. But that, and I think of like Ethan Doherty. Instantly, we're talking about structure. I think you can see Kieran Mean has given them back a lot of structure in their attack already, and so Ethan Doherty's form has risen again very quickly, because he's the man that knits that together.
And everything,
he makes that happen. But that Derry team relied on goals. They were very good at scoring goals in that time. And again, we're back to, I just look at the way Kerry defend, the way Donegal are defend at the minute. That sort of defensive setup is kind of built to prevent goals. You defend narrow and compact all the time, and I just worry that unless Derry can find a way to increase their 2-point threat and get a few, and basically draw a defence out, and then create the space for the goals. That's look, and those things can be done. That's the great thing about it. Like, it's not rocket science. It's not anything that they don't already know themselves, and it's very achievable. And if they can find a way to do that, all of a sudden, once you start to draw that defence out round the arc and make them and then you create Ethan Doherty's pockets where he can pop the ball into Conor McCluskey running through, then the game opens up for you. And then people talk about Derry not having forwards, but they won back-to-back Ulster Championships, and they scared the life out of Kerry in Croke Park, and their forwards, their numbers are more efficient than people give them credit for. They get a lot of scores from other areas as well, which the better teams do. Donegal were praised widely last year for having routinely 10, 11, 12 scores in a game, and that was their method. So you can say they don't have the forwards, and you can make that argument, and there might be some truth in that argument, but it's still manageable, and they still have better forwards, I think, than people give them credit for too.
Okay. Well, you obviously touched on the depth issue there, and the issue of the underage success that both counties have had. And you can pick me up if I'm wrong here Tyrone have obviously had a regular cycle, going back to the early noughties, like a regular cycle of underage success, as Cahair says, and that has kind of been the backbone of keeping them competitive at that level. Derry won their first Ulster Minor in 2015, won another in 17, another in 2020, and then 1-2 other in 22 and 23. Is that right?
I think so. You've the right numbers. I'm not sure if you're right. You've the right
Right
numbers.
age grade, have I the right
Yeah.
age grade?
All the
Yeah,
right
maybe.
notes, not necessarily in the correct order.
Okay, but you get the point. You know, there's like that's an awful lot of underage success on a routine, on a kind of repetitive level. Are we seeing like what's the difference between how that progression is being made in the two counties? Because we see it, Kenny. The Tyrone always seem to get like.
Well, the big difference, like you're talking about minor there, and now I can't remember the exact year, but that's under 17 now. That used to be under 18, so it's a further step away from senior. And over that same past decade, Tyrone have won, just check my notes, 6 under 20 All Irelands. You know, that is the stepping stone to senior grade. I used to love under 21 football because it was that balance between sort of the openness of youth and you're getting still the physicality of lads that are close to senior. So you're a wee bit back from that.
Yeah, like look what Tyrone got out of that 2015 under 21 team.
Yeah, that was the backbone then for the 2021 Senior All Ireland. But just that grade, Tyrone are having a lot of success under Paul Devlin in particular there, and that just makes it a lot easier. Like you're able to bring lads, and Tyrone have been doing that. When the under 20 season finishes, they can just move onto the senior scene. They're close enough to it. So, and again, Tyrone have been doing quite well at minor under Jared Donnelly. So there's that seamless production line almost. But that goes way back. Tyrone started this in the early 90s, possibly before, but there was a real push in the early 90s to go, right, what are we going to do? Because we want to win senior football All Irelands. Yeah. And they've looked at their coaching structures and put a lot of good men into place. That fed into All Ireland final in '95, semi final in '96, and then fed in further to
an incredible group. Yeah.
2003, 2005, 2008, and the great under 20 and minor work done under Mickey Hart, who moved up. So Tyrone have had that going, and you don't just obviously you have to keep adapting and moving, and Tyrone do that. And so they just keep bringing lads through. And then we mentioned the word expectation earlier. And in general, in Tyrone, there is an expectation that you win Ulsters and you win All Irelands. And then that gets fed on and the demands are set. You don't just settle for, oh, we did well there, we got to an Ulster final. No, you're regarded as, well, that was disappointing if you don't win it. And then even from that, as particularly was shown with those under 20s, it's just like, year upon year, they're meeting a Kerry team or whatever and they're being talked up. Tyrone beat them, and then it feeds on through. So you're getting these lads who have that belief that we can win at an All-Ireland level. And then if you get 2 or 3, like the team you mentioned there, it was so exceptional to have, 7 or 8 guys almost into the senior panel, maybe more, or in the senior team.
Of real quality too. It's different.
They were exceptional. But if you get 2 or 3 out of a All-Ireland winning underage team, that's all you need to elevate your senior panel.
From Derry's perspective, Cara, I saw you looking at the map this morning and trying to work out the, I suppose, geographic.
You're painting the picture of me as a geek, Neil. What are you doing that for?
You do a great job of painting that picture yourself, to be fair, so you don't need my help. You were looking at geographically, I suppose, the where both counties are drawn from, and maybe that's part of the issue here, rather than just why we're not getting all these guys coming through necessarily.
Look, there's a huge amount baked into it, and ultimately, when you look at the rest of the country, right around Ireland, a lot of counties will come to Derry and Tyrone over the last 7 or 8 years and ask, what are you doing? Why are you so good at minor level? Why are you so good at under 20 level? So it's not that Derry are necessarily doing anything wrong, because the amount of All Ireland minors that they've won in the last 5 years is way above their history, and so they're obviously doing an awful lot right. Tyrone, rightly, as you say, have prioritised the 20s grade, probably more so. They didn't win an All Ireland minor for 15 years between 2010 and last year, but they've won their All Ireland under 20s, and they've probably been able to supplement their senior team a wee bit more easily. And I think that was the thing that really struck during the Mickey Hart and the Paddy Tally reigns, that they came in to a county that had such success at minor level, and we're saying, like, we're trying to build a squad here. We need depth. We need depth. We need depth. And when you looked at the
because Kieran Meena talks about that, he would
And-
reference
and
the
they-
fact that he's coming into a stronger Derry squad now than what he left.
no doubt, and those fellas have had a decent bit of exposure. You looked at the championship squads that particularly Mickey Hart had, and I just remember, I think it was the Westmeath game, tallying up, had the 7-8 championship appearances between the entire subs bench, at that point.
Yeah.
And that was 10 years into the project or 9 years into the project, so there was definitely some sort of malfunction. And you're right, like, it's a massive gap from 17 to 22, 23 when you're effectively starting your inter-county senior career. For most fellas, there aren't many Owen McAvoys who jump straight in at that age and are physically ready for it. There are very few of those. Derry, and I've said this for a long time, and it's criticism in some ways, but it's not as well. Like, Derry football operates off one lung in terms of you're laughing at my map, like, but I was just calculating, like, the Derry team on Saturday night came from an area of 70 square miles. The Tyrone team came from an area of 400 square miles.
And where's that 70 square miles encompassing?
Effectively situated between Mahara and the Loch Shore, and that sort of, there's a small triangle of area down there that they predominantly have picked their inter-county team from for a long time. And the triangle sort of then between Coleraine to Mahara and then across through to Claudia and North Area and back up to Coleraine. Like, there's very few inter-county players that come from anywhere outside of Dungiven. And Dungiven have been able to maintain senior status, and Banner have produced a few as well. They've done well, but by and large that area is not fertile ground for the Derry county team. And they've put a lot of work into the city. Like, you take that's the only area that's not serviced by a McCrory Cup school. Do you know what I mean? You have Cahair in the city, you have St Pat's and St Mary's in South Area, and then you have the middle of the county, which is, the schools are all kind of left to their own devices, and there's just a lot there, and then it feeds into club football. The vast majority of the junior clubs, bottom end intermediate clubs, are from that pocket, and when you go to Derry's record against Tyrone at junior level, at intermediate level, traditionally, historically, at club level it's been poor. At senior level, Derry have done well against their own teams because the top end stays strong. The clubs stay really strong in the top 4 or 5 all the time. And so that's why Derry produces All-Ireland club winners and Ulster club winners and dominates the Ulster Minor Club Championship. It can. The top 4 or 5 can be so far ahead. Like, it was probably fair enough comment that the Derry Championship had a pretty defined top 4
this year.
In the past, I think, is it the past 3, maybe 4 years that it's been the same 4 semi-finalists. So, like, there's a pretty defined group of teams there that are ahead of the others. But, like, there's just so much that they're getting right. But it feels like they're operating off such a small part of their potential. And I know they've put a lot of stock and a lot of effort into Derry City, and you can understand with the population that they have, and you would try and tap into that. But I just feel that that kind of area, North Area, has just been left to its own devices for a long time and not really cultivated at all.
I just want to say at this point, I smell a red and white herring. And I looked at the GAA demographics survey, and this really surprised me, the number of senior players in the 2 counties. In Tyrone, there's just under 2,800, and in Derry, there's just under 2,600. Like, I would have thought there was always this. The late great Eamon Coleman once referred to Derry as the Longford of Ulster, and Derry, they put on the poor mouth. Oh, look at us! We don't have,
but club-wise, like,
we don't have the clubs. You've got the players.
Derry has 40 clubs, and Tyrone has maybe 48, 47, 48.
Tyrone is 54 apparently, and
but was that? But talking sort of senior football, a couple of those would be Dungannon Hurling Club and
well, I think there's
so around about 48, 50.
But the point remains,
clubs.
this is the amount of senior players that are available in both counties. It's not that big a difference. It's been used a wee bit of an excuse that Derry are like this. We're the wee brother here. How are we able to compete with Tyrone? There's a lot of quality in Derry. There's a lot of great clubs, and it goes back to this. Genuinely, like, we could have this discussion, and overall, like, and you would have laughed at me if you said you want a reason of why Tyrone are better than Derry from my viewpoint. I would have just said, well, they just are. And you have that, you see, I knew you'd laugh. But you have that belief, and there is that belief in there, and you have to think, we're better, we're the best, we're going to go and win All Irelands. And I think Derry,
that's why everybody loves you.
Yeah, but I think, I think a wee bit in Derry, there's always like, oh, we're doing well here to win an Ulster. Or, no, you can, you have to aim higher.
I don't know. I don't like using this stat. I've used it a few times, and but I think it sums up what I was saying there. Like that, still to this day, the last time a player from a junior club at that time played championship football for Derry was Mickey O'Brien in 1980. That is 46 years ago now. They've had no player from a junior club play championship football since then. And
but that doesn't really matter.
In such a small county, like you only have 40 clubs.
There you're at it again, a small county.
It is a small county in terms of GAA.
But the figures don't prove that. The demographic survey has shown that there's not a big difference. 93% of what Tyrone have in senior players.
And you're not harnessing of those 2,500. How many are you cultivating out of the bottom 800 or 900? That's my point. But Derry is getting nothing out of those.
You tell me you can't get a good senior panel out of 1,800 then?
Against 2,800, you're saying?
No, but
Tyrone and other counties.
The Tyrone not have junior clubs.
They do. But that's my point. Tyrone and other counties, like Tyrone, got two of their best ever out of Clan Gael and Ahibrack, like Stephen O'Neill and Brian Dooher, like
Tyrone junior clubs are
they will produce occasionally, like Cahair are not a junior club, like, but they would be up and down and producing consistently, sort of producing county players as well, and like that's the difference. That's my point. That the 46 years without a single player from any of those clubs is a massive. There's something wrong there. There's just something not right.
I think it's good you've got a Tyrone man in charge. Give you that wee bit of winning mentality and belief, So.
Just a final point on this, and just because I don't want Cahair to waste a morning's research, but you mentioned the Derry catchment area there. Tyrone, what was it then in terms of the players, the catchment area?
We were looking at it's 400 square miles that they were fit to pick their team from on Saturday evening, and not fit to pick their team from, did pick their team from. That was that was the sort of perimeter. And sorry, when I say that, 70.
County,
I must make 70 square miles. That was with the exception of Diarmuid Baker, who then from Steelestown. So you take if you want to pull it extra, you're kind of
Tyrone's
geographically, a wee bit of gerrymandering, but it does make, because the Steelestown representation was up and down. It's down at the minute again from what it had been. It goes up and down, but it's down at the minute.
But there's plenty
again.
of parts of Tyrone you drive through, and there's not a GAA club, or there's junior clubs.
Yeah. There are, but it's. What was the question again? He's winding up so much.
I was more so asking.
The next thing he'll be telling us how much of Loch Ness is in Derry,
it's just about the catchment area and where Tyrone were pulling from. But it's just
and it goes back again to club football. And I'll make this point very strongly. And I've said this. The one county in Ulster that has been competitive consistently over the last 25 years is Tyrone. Everybody else comes up and goes down, and comes up and goes down, and dips and troughs and peaks and troughs. Tyrone stay consistent, and it is my firm belief that the reason they stay consistent is because the level of their club football stays so consistently high, in the sense of, like, Derry's best club is very often will beat Tyrone's best club in the Ulster club, and most of the time do. So the top end is pretty even, but the bottom end, Tyrone are squashing up because they keep it stronger, and they do so by insisting that their county players play 7 or 8 club league games. It keeps their club league worth winning, keeps their club standard so high, and then their championships knockout, it keeps the standard of those games really high. Whereas, and it's not just Derry, it's almost every county at this point, where they have allowed their club football to fall to nothing, where you are reducing the leagues to a series of glorified friendlies. You are then putting in maybe a group stage championship where
and then taking it out.
And then teams can get knocked out if they try sometimes. Like, we've had situations where clubs in Derry have rested players for championship games, which has But you know, when you have them not playing in the league, then they have them resting for championship games as well. So
coming in for the last couple,
and
like,
that does not, like, I get it in the short term why inter-county managers want that and why they would push that, and that has happened in Tyrone too. Managers have fought with county board and clubs looking their players to play less, and the clubs have resisted and the county board have resisted. And in the long term, I think it's what will stand to Tyrone more than anything else, more than any other county, because what happens in 10 years' time when you have diluted your club game to absolutely nothing, and then you go to try and pick a county team. And I know we're finding now more and more out of development squads as opposed to the clubs. We're not picking from there, but if you keep the standard of your clubs high, the players going to your development squads are better, and then they're easier developed to a higher level. So I think there's a bit of self-harm in terms of what counties are doing with their club leagues particularly.
And just on that, I will agree with Cahair there, shockingly. But, you know, we've seen in Derry where there are clubs that have gone down in the league but have absolutely refused to be out of senior championship, and there have been strokes pulled and so on. And then you look in Tyrone, massive clubs, senior champions in recent times, Cahair and Clonoe,
Intermediate.
both going down, you know, to intermediate. Yeah. And that's just accepted, and you have to be on merit to be in the senior championship. You've got to win your way back up to it.
And even the balance, like Tyrone has 16 senior clubs, 16 intermediate clubs, and then the rest play junior. Now they have a junior Division 3B as well, or 3A. But Derry's top heavy. There's been an insistence on keeping, and not from the county board, in fairness, they've tried at length to change it, but the clubs have resisted, and there's been 16 senior clubs effectively forever.
Well, you look at the most
16
successful
senior, 10 intermediate and 8 junior, like that structure doesn't make, or 11 or 12 intermediate, whatever it is at the minute, but that structure doesn't make sense.
Well, you look at the most successful football county of all, and I've griped about this leading into the All-Ireland series, but Kerry, 8 senior clubs.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and they have a lot of smaller clubs, and then, you know, but the Kerry football structures are very good and competitive and feeds into their success.
So a lot of Tyrone and Derry legends came together on Saturday night in Celtic Park for protests, anti-Allianz protests. Obviously there were anti-Allianz protests in Ballyshannon yesterday, and it's obviously going, you know, it's been a feature of the start of the league. It's going to continue to be a feature. Kenny, it is an issue that isn't going to go away as much as some in the GAA might wish it would.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's ongoing efforts to keep this in the public eye. And I'll just a wee reference here to show them down with the kids. I was listening to Six Music this morning. This song came on.
That's for 40-year-olds.
What's Six Music? What is Six Music?
It's, you know, for, you know, offbeat music and the like. You know, you're probably on Radio 2 or something. Sorry, I know it should be Q, but anyway.
As in Google Maps.
But the song's called Rule 31, and the opening lines were rule number 31: do what I say and it'll be okay. And that just struck me. That's the message that the hierarchy of the GAA is trying to send out to its membership. It's ever since the protests against Allianz down at Croke Park last summer, off the back of the UN special report, the GAA has tried to sort of close down debate, has tried to say, there's nothing we can do here. We have to continue with this. Now, whether or not you think it's right or wrong to continue with Allianz, what I believe is right is that the GAA membership should be allowed their say. And even if they're wrong, that's democracy. You know, the people in many countries vote for wrong policies, in my opinion. But again, that's democracy. You have to let people have their say this is what we want our organisation to do. The GAA is different from a lot of other sporting organisations. It stands for certain values. It represents the communities, and I don't think it's doing that very well at the minute.
Yeah, I think as well, there's a PR issue here to a degree. Like, and obviously you've written a couple of times, Kenny, about maybe the idea of stymieing debate over this issue. And even when you go back to the original, when the GAA released their position at, like, you know, 6 p.m. on the Friday before Christmas, that kind of thing, and you just look at stuff like that and go, my God, it plays so badly. But, you know, Cara, what do you think? Like, because it is a nuanced issue, and it can't really be presented as anything other than that. It's not black and white.
No, it's not black and white at all. Like, and before I would start, because there are definitely grey areas within it. I would be very much on the same side as Kenny in terms of like the GAA. I think what the GAA have done wrong is that they've kind of they've not done enough. You know, the legalities of the contract are one thing. They're tied to a contract now. They signed in 2025. January 2025. They're signed till 2030. That is difficult to break. No matter what way we skin that cat, that's a hard thing to get out of. And for me, the best way the GAA can do that is to make Allianz's life difficult. To come out and criticise Allianz, to come out and, you know, because there's nothing in the contract that says they can't do that. Well, I'm saying that there maybe is something in the contract, maybe a breach of contract, but there are ways and means for them to push against Allianz, to support a push against Allianz without actually saying, well, we want out of this contract, we're cutting ties, and they almost make it so uncomfortable for Allianz to be the sponsor that they say, you know what, this is not worth the hassle. We'll break the contract. Do you want? We talk about mutual agreement in soccer a lot of the time. Like, can you get to a point of mutual agreement where this contract is ripped up? So that's where I think it should be. That's where I think the GAA should be on it, and that involves Congress, which, you know, Congress is a place I don't have a huge amount of time for, in terms of the way that decisions are made at it and some of the decisions that are made at it. But it is the forum for democracy, as you say, that the GAA has. But they're baked in. There are a lot of intricacies, and the biggest one that, and I know it has been made the point, but in some ways it is a fair point. It's not even about the sponsorship per se. It's about the underwriting of the insurance of every clubhouse and every piece of infrastructure that the GAA owns. Allianz underwrite that in their insurance, and that is the bit that would need, because you obviously can't leave the clubs without insurance, so somebody has to insure them, and then you go down the list of insurers. Which insurer is it in Ireland that is totally clear of any of these issues? Who is going to insure it that isn't investing in Israel or isn't so? And I'm not making a defence for them. I'm just saying that that's the reality of the position that they're in, and that's why for me it's more difficult than just the sponsorship argument. That's why it's hard to get out of it, but they haven't done enough to get out of it.
But I totally agree with that. I mean, we have to live in the real world, and you cannot just, it's not flicking off a switch here. You can't just stop all those insurance issues overnight, or even the sponsorship contract. But you have to start the process. There's an old saying, you know, when's the best time to plant an orchard? 20 years ago. When's the second best time? Now. And since last summer, the GAA has tried to stop any moves towards ending the associations with Allianz. It's my understanding that the decision to continue was really made in September at high level, at Central Council and Management Committee. We then had the process of the Ethics and Integrity Commission, including some people recusing themselves from that. That report was slipped out on a Friday night. Good time to bury bad news. The GAA's defence of why they made that decision just prompted a huge amount of questions from me. I wrote a column about it, and it's this idea, you know, and I think it irks a lot of people within the GAA, underselling ourselves, underselling the association. The idea is if Allianz are doing this because they're just really generous guys. Sponsors do this because it reflects well on them. They do the insurance of the GAA because they make money off it. So you have to allow people to start looking for alternatives, and don't tell us that there's no alternative in the world that doesn't have some links to the Israeli government. I just don't believe that. Colm O'Rourke, now I didn't get reading his column yesterday. I believe he wrote quite strongly on the issue, but I was made aware that he's saying, I know people, I can go out and get you alternative sponsors. The GAA is a very attractive proposition for sponsors.
That has blown my mind slightly with this whole conversation, and again, probably all of us have maybe spoken to figures at different levels within the GAA who've put this argument across that, like, you know, going to really struggle to get another another sponsor of you know of that kind of level, and I'm going, my God, like the GAA is,
And I don't believe in terms of what they sponsor, in terms of the leagues are so much higher profile than they were now. Like virtually every game's on TV.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like it's Allianz wall to wall from January to April, and then they're involved in championship as well. So it's I don't think replacing the sponsorship should be made as big an issue for sure. Like it's a weak argument
it
basically.
feels like a smokescreen.
It does.
Like
It does. Aye, where are we going to get somebody to replace all this? And it just feels like a cover for what they should have been doing, and that's making moves to try and find a way out of this. Because
Yeah, so I just jump in, and Cahair, you mentioned bad publicity, and again, people have contacted me to say Allianz does various things within schools, and there are parents who are stopping their children being involved in these events and being photographed in front of Allianz branding and so on. And it could come to that point where Allianz is regarded as toxic, or looks itself and thinks this bad publicity is too much.
and that's actually
we will step away.
That's
Yeah.
where you want it to get to in terms of the GAA.
Well, I think that's the aim,
because
isn't it, clearly,
you know,
for those protesting. I mean,
absolutely, and you're talking about Allianz and other like sports washing is worldwide. We see it everywhere in every sport, and it's and when it started, there was noise, and then it just becomes normalized. Like everything else, the breaking the barrier on the first one is the hardest, and then everything else trips after, and suddenly you don't notice it anymore. And that is what those big companies have done forever, for a long time, is tried to involve themselves in things that give themselves good PR. And that's and I just think the GAA has to hold itself to a different standard in terms of allowing itself to be used like that. That's effectively what it's doing. It's Allianz are giving us a feed of money. What are we going to do?
But Allianz obviously still wants to continue this. I think we know, or we're aware, that the Irish News wasn't invited to that recent Allianz League launch, which is just, we're always invited to those. And I mentioned it last week in print, and I don't think it got picked up much, but I thought this was very cynical. For some reason, Allianz, in their 2026 league's launch, were referencing a 2024 campaign, which was called Stop the Drop, which was meant to be about stop and drop off of teenage players within the GAA. But very conveniently, the campaign against them has been called Drop Allianz. And that just really struck me about it was reminiscent of the Boris bus. The money, we were told, was going to, on the side of the bus, that was going to come to the UK for Brexit, back into the NHS. And then Boris Johnson sits and does this weird interview where he claims to make model buses. Now, I know I'm going to people go, he's getting into conspiracy theories here, but if you start Googling Boris bus, then you get this interview about him making model buses. Allianz talking about Stop the Drop. There's a lot of moves being pulled here, and there's a very patronising attitude being adopted towards the membership of the GAA over this issue, almost a pat on the head, and we know better than you. GAA has a very highly educated, intelligent membership, and to tell them that there's no way we can get out of this contract, there's no one else that we can take on, it just doesn't wash with me. I know I'm just mid-rant here, but I remember at one point with the NUJ, and we had to bring a case within the journalists union ourselves, where we were trying to protect a colleague and stuff that was appearing on a blog about her. And we had a meeting with high-level NUJ officials, and we were told, oh, you can't take stuff off the internet. It's just impossible. And I said, well, you can try. And then, as it turned out, that mechanism did come in soon afterwards, that people were able to take stuff off the internet. Over this whole process, you can try. You can try and get out of Allianz's contract. You can make moves. You can look for someone else. Don't tell us that this is impossible.
And I just have to say, fair play to the counties in the north, because as with most things, sometimes they're resistant to change. Sometimes they're resistant to things that are maybe actually good for the GAA. But there's no doubt that obviously the political awareness up here is heightened, and the counties are more, what's the word? More passionate, or more,
Politically
more
engaged,
exercised by these issues and things. And it has been the counties in the north that have driven this. And Tyrone, I don't know. I'm sure they've had it in the neck from Croke Park over the last 2 weeks. I'm sure Derry have had it in the neck since Saturday evening as well. I'm sure they're Donegal will get it, even though there wasn't a formal. Theirs was an outside sort of street protest organised by individuals as opposed to on the pitches in Tyrone and Derry. So that's slightly different. But there's no doubt about it. They have fought this battle and will keep fighting it. And if anything comes of it, the credit will absolutely go to those people that fought it.
Well, just I very much always wave the Ulster flag, but we should just give credit to Offaly, who were the first county to pass a motion. And I know that in Tipperary they tried to pass a motion there as well, and it was ruled out of order on a technicality. And just on that front of all the motions that were passed by counties, we know if the GAA wants a debate on an issue, the motion will come before Congress. People will be given a helping hand how to write them. We're getting the opposite of that at the minute. All these motions are being told that you can't have it because you're citing an outside body, the United Nations, or you haven't put this correctly into the appropriate rule, so and so. This should come before annual Congress for debate. At least one motion should be drafted correctly and allowed to go before the floor of Congress, because that's democracy.
I agree. Like when the motion is coming from so many counties, and if it's out of order or it's not written correctly, they should then write the motion. They should write the motion and put it on the agenda themselves, because then it's right, and that opens the floor to the discussion, as opposed to hiding behind those technicalities and not allowing that to be debated. It'll be interesting to see how the debate would go on the floor of Congress, what that would bring about, whether it would bring about any change, because as I say, it's a body that you've seen in the past. Sometimes the decision making has been questionable from the floor in terms of things that you'd think are pretty solid, sensible. Even the one that always gets me is the transparency in the voting. Like they voted that you would be able to see how each county voted, and I think it was 90% voted against it, or 87 or 90% voted against it. And I just thought at that point, why do that? Like if you should be mandated by your clubs, and your county should vote as a block on what the clubs want, because that is a democratic forum. Like I can feel Neil's eyes glazing over this.
But again,
that's so bored of Congress now.
That's their democratic right to be.
He's like, is that time up yet?
Anti-transparent. But Congress may well not back such a motion, but it should be allowed to vote on it.
Yeah, and I think we're obviously going to be. This isn't the last time we're going to be talking about this issue. It is one that is going to persist for however long, months and hopefully not years to come.
We've put years on your face there.
Not at all. No, I really enjoyed listening to you. I feel I've been educated by it all. So thanks very much to Cahair O'Kane, and thanks very much to Kenny Archer, and thanks to everybody for joining us at the Monday Club this week. Remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast or watch the podcast.